Imagine walking outside tomorrow morning to find a heavy metallic chassis mounted right beside your home's main breaker box. It's slightly larger than a central air compressor, hums with a steady, low-frequency pitch, and features a liquid cooling loop plugged directly into an array of enterprise-grade silicon. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, executing distributed artificial intelligence inference workloads for global tech firms. In exchange, the utility company promises you a subsidized electricity bill, an integrated battery backup, and free high-speed fiber routing. This isn't a speculative pitch for a distant smart city dystopia. In April 2026, energy technology firm SPAN launched XFRA, a residential distributed computing framework engineered in direct partnership with NVIDIA to turn private homes into decentralized server farms. Almost overnight, viral social media posts transformed this engineering shift into an irresistible financial lure, claiming homeowners could passively harvest $22,000 a year just by letting silicon sit in their side yards. The hardware is real. The $22,000 checks are almost certainly fantasy. But while homeowners debate whether a liquid-cooled server will ruin their suburban quiet, an infinitely larger, quieter, and far more predatory transformation is consuming thousands of acres across Texas, Idaho, Utah, and the American Midwest. The global artificial intelligence race has run headfirst into a brutal, unyielding brick wall: the physical limitations of the United States power grid. Hyperscale operators can buy tens of thousands of Blackwell processors in a single afternoon, but they cannot force a regional utility to construct a high-voltage substation or draft a water rights permit on a corporate deadline. To bypass years of regulatory gridlock, the tech sector is executing a two-pronged strategic maneuver. On one end, they are micro-fragmenting computing loads across residential neighborhoods, using systems like XFRA, pushing operational noise, heat, and grid volatility directly onto private homeowners. On the other, they are dropping multi-gigawatt mega-campuses onto rural communities, demanding astronomical volumes of water and electricity while operating behind non-disclosure agreements and non-binding employment promises. Public records reveal a system stretched to its absolute breaking point, where local utility commissions are quietly shifting the multi-billion-dollar infrastructure bill for these server farms onto ordinary residential ratepayers. Viral rumors claim the government is secretly constructing underground containment zones and subterranean high-speed transit networks mapped beneath these sites. The actual reality is vastly more terrifying, and it requires no conspiracy theories. The true scandal is that the basic life support systems of American towns, the drinking water in regional aquifers, the structural integrity of high-voltage grids, and the tax base of small counties are being systematically re-engineered to feed an industrial machine that generates almost no long-term local jobs, pays pennies on the dollar in taxes due to municipal exemptions, and consumes more raw power than entire sovereign nations. If you think your local utility bill is high today, or that your regional water table is secure, you are radically miscalculating the physical cost of the digital intelligence being built around you. By 2028, data centers are projected to consume up to 12% of all electricity generated in the United States, forcing coal plants to extend their lifespans and driving regional aquifers into severe deficit. The infrastructure is being locked into place right now under the cover of complex municipal code and corporate non-disclosure agreements, leaving everyday citizens with a simple, urgent question: who is actually going to pay for the massive physical fallout when the hype meets the reality of an exhausted grid? To understand how American suburban backyards became prime real estate for liquid-cooled enterprise processors, one must examine the systematic failure of the United States power grid to keep pace with modern capital expenditure. The structural origin of this bottleneck dates back to the Energy Policy Act of 2005, which restructured regional transmission organizations and decentralized grid planning across the lower 48 states. For nearly 2 decades, this regulatory framework functioned adequately under flat national demand curves. Between 2005 and 2022, total American electricity consumption grew at an average rate of less than 1% annually, allowing regional utilities to delay capital investments in heavy transmission infrastructure and substation upgrades. That era of static load profiles ended abruptly with the commercial deployment of large language models and generative artificial intelligence architectures. According to historical load data published by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, a traditional enterprise data center running basic cloud computing software operated with a power density of roughly 4 to 10 kilowatts per server rack. By late 2023, high-density AI clusters utilizing advanced GPU architectures required up to 40 to 100 kilowatts per rack. The physical infrastructure built during the late 20th century was simply not engineered to transport that volume of continuous current to isolated geographical nodes. The administrative crisis escalated throughout 2024 and 2025 across regional interconnection queues. In PJM Interconnection, the regional transmission organization coordinating wholesale electricity across 13 eastern states, the average timeline for a new utility-scale power project to complete interconnection studies stretched past 5 years. Developers seeking to construct dedicated multi-hundred-megawatt data center campuses faced queuing delays that pushed operational launch dates into the 2030s. The bottleneck was not a lack of capital or semiconductor availability, it was the physical lead time required to manufacture high-voltage transformers, acquire rights-of-way for transmission lines, and clear regulatory reviews through state public utility commissions. This physical delay created a direct conflict between financial markets and utility operators. Hyperscale technology firms, backed by hundreds of billions of dollars in allocated capital, operated on quarterly product release schedules. Utility commissions, bound by statutory obligations to protect residential ratepayers from speculative infrastructure spending, operated on multi-year planning horizons. The clash became inevitable. Software deployment speeds collided directly with the heavy industrial timeline of regional grid expansion. By early 2026, the structural backlog reached a critical tipping point. Data center electricity consumption in the United States reached 183 terawatt-hours in 2024, representing over 4% of total national generation. Projections released by the Department of Energy indicated that without structural changes to grid architecture, data center load could exceed 9% of national power consumption by 2030. Conventional site selection, identifying large rural parcels near existing high-voltage lines, yielded fewer and fewer viable locations as regional substations hit maximum transformer capacities. Street Insider. It was within this context of regulatory gridlock and capacity exhaustion that SPAN announced XFRA on April 13, 2026. The economic rationale behind the announcement was derived from a long-standing statistical anomaly in residential distribution engineering. According to grid operational data, standard American single-family homes equipped with 200-amp service panels operate at an average of only 40 to 45% of their maximum rated electrical capacity. The remaining headroom sits completely unused for the vast majority of the day, reserved by grid planners for rare moments when every heavy home appliance operates simultaneously. Business Wire. Instead of spending 5 to 10 years navigating regional interconnection queues to construct a single, centralized 100-megawatt facility, SPAN proposed aggregating that idle residential headroom. By pairing smart electrical service panels with localized battery storage and liquid-cooled hardware running NVIDIA RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell GPUs, the company designed a framework to bypass traditional utility queue restrictions. Each installation functions as a micronode, drawing on pre-approved existing residential service drops without requiring a new commercial interconnection agreement from regional transmission operators. Partnerships with major national home builders, including PulteGroup, signaled an immediate move to embed this industrial computing infrastructure into master-planned residential developments at the point of construction. Rather than seeking industrial zoning permits, developers could deploy processing nodes directly into suburban residential zones under the administrative umbrella of smart home energy management systems. Slavicsac.com. This strategic shift created a profound geographic and legal trap. By distributing commercial processing loads into residential neighborhoods, technology firms effectively bypassed the public oversight mechanisms that traditionally govern heavy industrial development. Environmental impact reviews, water consumption disclosures, and dedicated industrial electricity tariffs, standard requirements for conventional data center campuses, were circumvented through decentralized residential deployment. The historical boundaries separating industrial-zoned lands from residential living spaces began to dissolve, shifting the physical realities of the national energy crisis directly onto local suburban infrastructure. The conflict between technological expansion and municipal infrastructure is no longer abstract. It is recorded in land deeds, water extraction permits, and utility rate filings across the American West. As centralized hyperscale facilities require unprecedented volumes of baseline power and liquid cooling, rural counties are becoming ground zero for an escalating clash between corporate capital, local communities, and ecological boundaries. In West Texas, where agricultural corridors separate Lubbock, Abilene, and Fort Worth, speculative land acquisitions have disrupted long-standing regional economies. Independent agricultural producers face land offers far exceeding agricultural valuations, as developers assemble multi-thousand-acre parcels adjacent to existing high-voltage transmission lines. This land conversion introduces heavy construction traffic, infrastructure strain, and severe water allocation concerns. According to benchmarks established by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, direct water consumption for data center cooling averaged 0.36 liters per kilowatt-hour in 2023. As high-density liquid cooling systems become standard for advanced GPU clusters, that figure is projected to rise towards 0.48 liters per kilowatt-hour. In arid regions dependent on finite ground allocations, high-volume year-round industrial withdrawals directly compete with farming operations and municipal reserves during peak summer heat. Further north in Idaho, the pressure centers on the Treasure Valley and the Snake River Plain aquifer system. While regional water bodies may appear stable in aggregate, state monitoring by the Idaho Department of Water Resources demonstrates localized drawdowns where annual pumping exceeds natural recharge rates. Historical irrigation patterns provided seasonal surface water application that assisted local aquifer recharge through agricultural runoff. The conversion of farmland to industrial data center campuses, such as Meta's $800 million facility in Kuna, fundamentally alters that balance. Industrial operations require continuous, non-seasonal water supplies. Although corporate developers frequently fund localized municipal infrastructure, such as Meta's $70 million investment in a Kuna water treatment plant, the sheer concentration of continuous industrial demand near Pocatello and Ada County creates long-term groundwater management challenges that regional regulators are struggling to reconcile. The most extreme manifestation of this industrial scale occurred in Utah. On May 4, 2026, Box Elder County approved resolutions enabling the Military Installation Development Authority, a state-level entity known as MIDA, to establish the Stratus project area. Promoted by investor Kevin O'Leary through O'Leary Digital, the proposal initially envisioned an unprecedented 40,000-acre development backed by up to 9 gigawatts of dedicated power generation capacity. The project's immense footprint and potential impact on regional air quality and the already precarious Great Salt Lake watershed triggered severe public opposition and intense political scrutiny. The resulting political backlash culminated in direct legislative intervention. Utah Senate President J. Stewart Adams issued formal demands requiring significant structural modifications to the proposal. In response, O'Leary Digital agreed in June 2026 to shrink the project footprint by half to approximately 20,000 acres, concentrating development within the Hansel Valley and setting aside 10,000 acres for open space and agricultural preservation, while relinquishing parcels in Locomotive Springs and along Interstate 84. O'Leary publicly acknowledged strategic errors in the initial rollout, conceding that environmental concerns and local community opposition had been severely underestimated. Despite this reduction, the project remains one of the largest planned infrastructure developments in the state, raising ongoing questions regarding long-term power sourcing, water conservation technology, and local tax structures. Underlying these regional battles is a consistent corporate playbook reliant on non-disclosure agreements and municipal tax incentives. Local county commissions are routinely asked to approve long-term tax abatements and utility infrastructure commitments under tight timelines, often before full environmental impact studies are made public. Furthermore, economic development claims frequently conflate short-term construction employment with long-term operational staffing. While site preparation and facility construction can temporarily employ over 1,000 skilled trade workers, an operational data center typically requires only 50 to 150 permanent technical personnel once online. When industrial developments secure preferential